All right. Hello, everybody. Hope you all are doing well. This is DFS Army's pre-lock show for this nice six-game NBA slate. I like this slate a good bit. I feel like there's quite a few interesting low-owned plays, but I don't know. How are you feeling, Brandon?
Yeah, when you kind of look at an overview of the matchups, it doesn't look too appealing. But
Mhm.
when you actually dig in and look at some of these plays, kind of like you said, there's some really good ones and definitely some low on plays. I think we can get some leverage on.
Yeah. And then for those of you who are new, we will answer most of your questions at the end of the show. Remember, lock isn't until 7:30, so we have plenty of time. No need to rush. But we'll answer most of your questions at the end of the show. Every once in a blue moon, if your comment aligns with the conversation that we're having, or I just find it interesting, then I'll go outside of our normal order. But that's going to be it. Let's see. Cujo, good to see you in the chat. Thomas, Harlock, Rodney, what's up, y'all? Dixon, good to see you, man. AD, a bum. Thank God he out and we're not going to lose money on him. You're preaching. You're preaching. I think AD getting ruled out, or he's doubtful, but him more than likely not playing is part of what's just made this slate so much better than it was.
Yep.
But let's jump right into things. Don Juan, I don't. I really hope Embiid plays, but we'll get there. For the Pacers tonight, they're going up against the Heat. I'm sharing my screen. B-Dubs, he'll talk through what he's doing and what changes he'll make. But we have the Pacers going up against the Heat. For the Pacers, Aaron Nesmith is out, and then Wiseman and Jackson have been out. So no real new injury news here. Tough matchup against the Heat, but still the highest total game on the slate. Did you do anything here?
Yep. I forced in Halliburton, 10% min. He's always a scary play because you never know which one you're going to get. Some games he's just all about passing to his teammates and not really being a part of offense. And then other nights he does both and just smashes. So I do like his price for his potential upside. So always willing to take a shot on him when his ownership is this low. If he was like 20% or just like super chalky, then I'd be a little more hesitant going there. And then the only other player I'm playing is Nimbard. I wish he was still in that 4K range, but um, overall he's been fairly solid since coming back. So I do like him a good amount. And thought about Siakam and Turner, but it wasn't the spot tonight for them.
Yeah, I agree with pretty much everything you said. Like I said, you look at the game totals, this has the highest total. This is always going to be a game that I'm looking for reasons to play guys, not reasons not to. There are reasons not to play some of these guys. As Brandon mentioned, there's plenty. But Halliburton, his ownership's going down. So I had a 12% min on him. Now I think 8% is enough for me here. I just want to be double the field because there is a lot of risk involved there. Siakam, Turner, Mathurin, those are just guys that I can't look at on this slate because there's just plays I like more. And then Nimbard's a decent mid-range value option. He's more of a sim model play. He was standing out for me there. Matchup's not brutal. I'm just going to keep what I have, a like and a 15% min on him. Let's see how much he's actually showing up in my exposures, right at 15%. And I think that's appropriate. We're going to talk a lot about on this show. Like, there's a lot of guards and just plays at every position on this slate. So I'm trying to make sure I don't go too overboard on too many guys outside of 2 to 3 guys that I'm taking harder stands on. Yeah, he is hard to trust, but I'm gonna take a small shot. Jimmy Bumler, Don, y'all are wilding today already. It's because there's no football. When there's no football, y'all are a little bit more wild. But all right, next up, we have the Heat going up against the Pacers. Similar situation here. No real injury news worth talking about. What was your game plan here?
So I was on the fence about Bam, which I ended up just leaning towards putting a 10% min on him. I just like the matchup. It should be a faster paced game for him, and he should be able to rack up some boards and hopefully get a double double tonight. So I will be playing him. I thought about Hero, but I didn't get there. There's a couple other guards that I'll touch on when we get there that's around his price range. So I just couldn't get there tonight. And then I did put a 10% min on Jovic. He's just a cheap value play that I wanted to throw in the mix. His floor is a bit scary, but when he's on, he can get you like 30 plus DraftKings points. So wanted to take a shot on him as well in this spot.
Yeah, no, I get it.
And
Again,
the sim model love them too.
wait, who?
Jovic. Yep.
Let me double check because Jovic was not standing out for me, but there's always so many things going on. Okay, I see what you're talking about. Sim model does like him a little bit. There's so many just decent options down here. Even guys like Dort, who we haven't gotten to yet, but we'll see. Dixon said, watch TJ McConnell get the double-double everyone is hoping Halibum gets. The good thing about the Pacers is that they're all super low owned, so you don't have to get too much exposure for them or to them, is the balancing act I have there. Is 87% Hero too much? For me, that's going to be yes, Grayson. Yep. What are your thoughts here, Brandon?
Yeah. He's only 10% owned, so that's kind of like overkill. Usually if I'm feeling really strong on somebody that low owned, I would say maybe like 40 tops, but even that would probably still be too much for me tonight, but definitely 87. I don't know if I could do that.
Yeah, if you're 20 maxing and you really like Hero, I think 40% is fine. Personally, on this slate, if you're doing more than 20 lines, I wouldn't want to go much higher than 15 to 20. You can see what I'm doing. I have a 10% min on Hero. I was looking at Bam and Duncan Robinson as some potential value options on this slate, but like I said, and Jovic as well, they're all viable. There's just other plays I like a bit more. We look at who I actually have exposure to, and all you see is Tyler Hero at 10% and a little bit of Duncan Robinson at 2%, but I'm still under the field there. All right, next up we have Boston going up against the Timberwolves. The tough piece here is Jaylen Brown being questionable because of how much this impacts everything. Or have we gotten that news yet?
Yeah, I was about to say he's out.
Oh, yeah, we got that a while ago. I'm just missing things. Dang it. That explains why Tatum was starting to pop a little bit more for me. Anyway, how much of the Boston guys are you getting exposure to?
Nothing.
I'm not getting a lot.
Yeah, nothing crazy. I'll have 20% on Tatum. It's just hard not to play him with Jaylen out. Not really a fan of the spot because I do think this will be a slower pace game, but he can definitely still pop off with Jaylen out. And then I do want to make sure I have some Drew Holiday just for his price. I'm willing to play him with Jaylen out, of course. He isn't usually one of the more offensively aggressive players on the team, but hopefully with Brown out, he'll get a few more shots up, and we know he can rack up steals, assists, and other stats to help his score out. And then I did put a 10% min on Sam Hauser as well, just because cheap value play, throwing the mix and expecting him to get the start with Brown out. And then I'm okay with some Pritchard as well. I might throw like a 5% min on him.
Yeah, the tough thing here for Boston is that they have a very tough matchup here, even with the injuries. If you put aside the injury, or if you put aside the matchup and you just focus on who sees an increase in a boost with Jaylen Brown and Kristaps Porzingis out, Derek White has a 6.4% increase in usage. Tatum sees a 5.9% increase in usage. Both of those are pretty substantial numbers, but they're not out of this world. Hey, I have to play these guys now. It's just one of those spots where I'm going to have to take a stand. And unless these guys start to show up a bit more for me naturally in the optimizer, I'm just going to keep riding with the guys I already like. Anyone else you want to touch on here?
Nope, that's it. Main priorities will be Tatum and Holiday.
Yeah. And let's see. So far, they're not showing up. I have a little bit of Sam Hauser around field weight exposure, a little bit of Drew Holiday, but no one else. I'm going to continue to think about putting him in on Tatum, but you all will see, like, there's other studs I'm prioritizing, and so I'm trying to avoid over tinkering on this one. All right. Next up for the Timberwolves, no real injury news for this team. They just get a brutal matchup going up against the Celtics here. What are you doing?
I have a 20% man on Edwards. He really hasn't been that great overall this season, but he's just someone like I feel like you got to have with his potential upside. I do think this game can be a really competitive one as well. And I usually like taking shots on him, although I do wish his ownership was a bit lower. And then I do have like a few other pieces showing up. Have a little Nas Reed and then Jaden McDaniels and Dante, but I didn't force any of those guys in. So only one I'm really forcing in is Edwards, and I'm letting everyone else fall into place.
Yeah, this game is one of the lower total games on the slate. And so that's just always one of those things that's going to make a game less interesting for me to want to force exposure to. I thought about Ant as well, but the ownership was just a little too high for me to try and force exposure there in this matchup. But it wouldn't surprise any of us if he went off. I spent probably way too much time today just looking back at Anthony Edwards' games and being like, wow, he used to have 60, 70 fantasy point upside. What happened? And I literally can't really tell you. He's shooting more threes, but his scoring is down. It's wild. I mean, yeah, just one of those things. And so I couldn't make it make sense. And this wasn't really a great spot for anybody, in my opinion. So I didn't force exposure. But if I had to guess, yeah, Jaden McDaniels is still showing up in about 16% of my lines. He's a value, cheapy, 4,100. I'm okay with that. I'm not going to do anything to make that not happen. Dante DiVincenzo, again, not someone you feel safe with, but at 4,900, he's a viable fill-in option for me. And then Nas Reed, I'm under the field on him, but he's showing up in a few lines. Same thing for Conley, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and then a little bit of Rudy and Ant. But again, I'm under the field on pretty much all these guys. They're just lineup fillers. So, yeah. Dixon, all right. You like Randall. We'll see. Hopefully he goes off for you. Yeah, I understand that one. All right. Let's see. Damn. Was that really the connection? The Sprite ad? I didn't make that connection, but you might be onto something because he ain't the same. He ain't the same. All right. Next up, we have the Nets going up against the Bucks. For the Nets tonight, we do have injury news. Let me take a peek at it and see what we're working with. Ben Simmons is out. That was big for this team. Clowney, questionable. And then the rest of it, we already know. I think the interesting thing for the Nets is what D'Angelo Russell did yesterday coming off the bench, right? So that gave us a lot of clarity around how involved he will be with this offense. But what was your strategy here?
Yeah, the obvious, of course, is D'Angelo Russell. He'll be a core play for me, and I'll have a good chunk of him tonight. He looked really good in his debut, and I think that continues. And the Bucks aren't really a team I'm worried about defensively. So whether he starts or not, which I have a feeling he will with Simmons out, but even if he comes off the bench again, I'm fine with that. So we'll have a lot of him. And then the only other player I forced in, or you don't even really have to force him in because he should show up naturally, but someone I want to be over the field on is Day'Ron Sharp. He's one of my favorite cheap plays tonight. I wish his minutes were a bit higher, but for what he does, see like right under 20 minutes, he is just a beast. He's a points per minute beast, so I do like him quite a bit as well. And then don't think I'm getting to anyone else here. You can always make a case for Cam Thomas and Cam Johnson with the amount of shots that they get up, and if it's falling, they can definitely break the slate, but just didn't get there tonight.
Yep. Hey, OG, we will definitely take a look and answer this question after we go through the games. Just want to let you know I saw it. But kind of like you said, this Nets team, I don't have too much interest in. I was looking at Cameron Johnson, but his price was just a little bit too high for the upside I think he brings us on this slate, but he's a viable option. D'Lo, though, is the guy I'm prioritizing. I have a like on him in the domination station to make him show up a bit more. And then I also like Sharp too. And so I put a like on him to make him show up slightly more in the DS as well. And so once I made those two changes, that made both D'Lo and Sharp show up as core plays. Sharp and Trace keep going back and forth. And so you'll see that change back and forth for me if I had to make an educated guess as I do more runs. But that's pretty much the strategy for me with the Nets. Anyone else you want to touch on here?
Nope.
All right. Next up, we have the Bucks going up against the Nets. And for the Bucks, I feel like for the first time in a long time, they're pretty healthy. I mean, Green's questionable, but that doesn't really matter. We have a healthy Bucks team going up against a pretty bad Nets team. The problem here is blowout. Gigantic spread of 13 points. You can already tell there's one guy I'm prioritizing here, but what were your thoughts when it came to the Bucks tonight?
Yeah, this is a team that I'm just completely off of tonight. Even Giannis, I thought about putting him in on him, but with having LeBron, who's cheaper, and then a good spot, I just didn't feel the need to go to Giannis, even though Giannis does have a higher ceiling, of course, because he could put up like a 80, 90-point game. But I know we said we don't play for blowouts, but I am worried about this staying competitive. So he's just one of the stands I'm taking tonight, and no one else is appealing because, like you said, they're pretty healthy, so hard to get to this team.
I love how I say I'm taking a stand, and Dixon automatically assumes I'm playing the craziest play from this team. Yeah, Lillard is really hard to play right now unless Giannis is out. He cannot be played. You're not wrong, man. But for me, I am prioritizing Giannis. I just saw an underdog news link come through or something like that. I'm pretty sure it was just saying that Giannis is available to play, but just want to double check. Yeah, Giannis is playing. Good. So yeah, Giannis is someone that I'm looking to prioritize just because the matchup's soft. Nets front court is not something that I'm worried about. So, yep, that's why I'm putting a 30% min on him. I want to be over the field on the players that I believe have the most upside on the slate. And so that was my strategy there. And then there aren't a little bit of Prince, a little bit of Gary Trent Jr., but still going to be under the field on those guys. Next up, we have the lowest game total on the slate. Clippers going up against the Thunder. The Clippers, have we gotten Harden news or no?
Not yet. I don't think so.
Okay. That Harden news is going to impact things pretty dramatically. As you can imagine, guys like Powell, Zubac, Kevin Porter Jr., Chris Dunn, like all of the starters, and even Derrick Jones Jr. too, would see a pretty solid boost if Harden misses. But outside of that, there's not really anything else we're waiting on for the Clippers. So what did you do here?
Only manual change I did was 10% on Zubac. I know he had a rough game last time out against Wemby, but I do think he bounces back tonight. Of course, if Harden is out, I'll like him even more. So I do have a 10% min on him. And then I didn't do anything to anyone else. I do have like around 5% Derrick Jones and 1% Coffee. I'm more okay with the Jones play. He's super volatile, but he sees quite a few minutes and always has the potential to pay this price off. So I am okay for him as like a line filler.
Yep. And for me with the Clippers tonight, like you said, the Harden news will impact everything. The matchup is brutal. OKC, they're a really good defensive team. The one area they've been weak, though, is against shooting wings. They've given up the 4th most fantasy points to shooting wings, and that's the category that Norman Powell falls under. And so that's why I just put an 8% min on him. Thunder, they're a great defensively coached team, and so I don't want to go crazy on a random stat line like that, but it's enough for me to want a little bit of exposure to a guy we know can be explosive and feel even better about Powell if Harden ends up getting ruled out. Then I have a like on Zubac, a like on Derrick Jones Jr. They were popping for me in the sim model, and then I just like Zubac because he's been doing well lately. And then let's see who shows up naturally or just in general. Who do we have exposure to? For the Clippers, we see Derrick Jones Jr. showing up in about 25% of my lines. That makes sense when we get to some of the other games and you see some of the guys that I'm forcing exposure to. I need those value type of plays. And then Zubac showing up around 11%. Coffee around 9%. Don't love that. I won't uncheck him just because Harden might get ruled out, which would make a guy like Coffee slightly more viable. But if we get that news before lock, I'm going to X him out. And then we have that 8% min on Powell. Cool. Okay, next up we have the Thunder, who are a team who are also relatively healthy this time of year. Let me just double check that though, make sure we're not missing anything. OKC. Yeah, I mean, still Caruso, Chet, all these guys have been, out for a while. Who are you playing from the Thunder? Are you taking a shot here today?
Yep. There's SGA, of course, sitting at 4% ownership, and he's just somebody. No matter the matchup, when he's that low on, I'll always take a shot on him. So 10% min on him, and then didn't do anything else to anyone. But I do have a good chunk of Case and Wallace and Lou Dort showing up. They're just some value plays that we need tonight. So not too overly excited about them, but it is what it is when it comes to those guys. I'll let the DS do his thing on both of them.
Yeah. I don't think you're wrong. It's not bad to take a shot on SGA. He's pretty much matchup proof. I am not, though. I every once in a blue moon, if I can find a reason to, I'll do it, but I couldn't find a reason to today. I did put a 35% exposure maximum on Case and Wallace. I like him as much as the next guy, but I like Lou Dort a little bit more on this slate, and so I just wanted to force the DS to do that for me, prioritize one over the other. And that's pretty much it. And for those of you, I don't think I've done this yet, we're using DFS Army's Domination Station Optimizer is how I've won multiple tournaments. It's what Brandon's used to win multiple tournaments. If you're interested in having access to this, the Discord, the sim model that we keep talking about, click the link in the description. Feel free to use promo code BDUB, BDUBB, for a 10% discount. And yeah, join us and ask questions and just hang out in the Discord. But yeah, for me, the Thunder is going to be a hard pass. I just don't like them very much today. There's a few of these guys showing up, but the only guys who I'm over the field on are Case and Wallace at that 35% and then Lou Dort at 52%. All right. This is where things get interesting, at least for me. Next up, we have the Sixers going up against the Warriors. The biggest news for me on this slate is going to be the Joel Embiid news. He's questionable. He didn't play yesterday, so I feel like there's a relatively good chance he should play today, but we know he's made of glass, so logic and reasoning don't really matter here. But in general, I know you like a few of these Sixers. Who are you looking at?
Yeah, I am playing some Embiid. I'm not quite as aggressive. I just have a 20% min on him. When he's not being a drama queen, he is actually pretty good at basketball. So if all goes well, he is too cheap for his upside. So definitely want to make sure I at least have some. Paul George, I do like him at his price. We haven't seen too much of a ceiling from him, but I feel like 7K is just too good to pass up on him. I don't mind taking a shot on Caleb Martin either. He's just another cheaper guy to throw in the mix. He's another guy where his floor is pretty scary, but he sees a lot of minutes, and I do like that Oubre is out as well, which should give him a slight boost. And then I am taking a shot on Maxey as well. He's one of the guards that I mentioned earlier while I wasn't taking a shot on Hero. Maxey is only $200 more, and think he will outplay Hero tonight. So I have a 15% min on him as well. And then that's pretty much it. Of course, if Embiid is out, then you have to include Yabusele in the mix as well.
Yeah, if Embiid's out, we have to look at Yabusele. We have to look at Maxey and George even more. I think they become fantastic plays on the slate, but I don't think we'll get that news in time for people to react the way they want to or would like to. For me, it's been something I've been doing for a long time. If there's a guy like Joel Embiid, who's I don't think he'll be 25% owned. I could be wrong. I think people are going to be scared to play him. But if there's a guy I know has 80, 90, 100 point upside and he's too cheap going up against the Warriors, who give up the 7th most fantasy points, or actually 6th most fantasy points to centers, I'm always going to play a guy like that. He's 9,400 in a fantastic matchup. Can he burn me? Yeah, but everything else makes sense. So I'm going to be significantly over the field on that. And so I put a 60% min on him for that reason. He'll be in the vast majority of my lines. And then I like the Maxey call, Brandon. I'm going to put a 5% min on him, especially with Kelly O being out. And I'm going to put a 15% min on Paul George. I can't go as high on them, but with Kelly being out, that does increase usage for Maxey and George primarily, and Embiid always does his thing. So I like those calls. Anyone else you think we might be missing, or are we good to move to the Warriors?
That is it. I did mention Caleb Martin, but I didn't mention what I did. I do have a 10% min on him.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, yeah, he pretty much has way more responsibility with Kelly out. So I get that. Let's see. For the Warriors, we have Curry, questionable, which obviously, if he gets ruled out, that's a huge boost to Schroeder. And then we already have Brandon Podziemski. He's been out for a little bit now, though. Kyle Anderson is questionable still. So there's some other injury news here that could be, relevant. Anyone stand out for you?
Yeah, Trace Jackson Davis, of course. It looks like the field is finally wising up and playing a lot of him. He's just been smashing game after game, and still too cheap for how he's been performing. So I like him quite a bit tonight.
You were yelling it from your chair where you are right now on, when was it? Was it Monday? Yeah, it was probably Monday. And you're like, he is too cheap, and he was a core play for you, I think, wasn't he, or no?
I think he was a leverage play. I don't think he was quite core, but he should have been.
He was a leverage play, yeah. Anyway, that was a great call. Great play. I interrupted you, so keep going.
I do like Kuminga quite a bit tonight as well. He's just another dude that's been balling like game after game, even coming off the bench. So I'll be slightly over the field. I'm like right under 30% on him. Schroeder, of course, I'll like him more if Curry is rolled out, because I think we're still waiting on that news. But he's not someone I'm prioritizing tonight. He just hasn't looked good once so far since getting on this team. So
you said James Harden news just come through?
Nope, I didn't. Is he out?
Things are never as easy as I want them to be. I had a clear-cut plan.
That changes a lot.
Yeah, and there's still more news we're waiting on. So we'll go back around per usual. But damn, that hurt.
So I definitely don't like Schroeder now because KPJ and Dunn,
Are
they're
going to
be a priority for sure now.
and Powell is no
And
longer a
Powell for
sneaky,
sure. Yeah.
low-owned 8% play. Everyone and their mom's going to have him.
Yep.
But yeah, for the Warriors, Kuminga is the guy I had to force exposure to. I wasn't getting enough of him earlier, so I put a like on him and a 23% min just to make sure I didn't forget about him. He's been crushing it. Solid matchup. And then, like you said, Trace, he's just too cheap for what he's been doing for this team lately. And so I didn't have to do anything to make him show up in 51% of my lines. And like I said earlier, he kind of goes back and forth with Sharp. And I'm sure court plays are going to change a ton with that news, but he should still show up in a good amount of lines. And then Schroeder is showing up in about 9%. Again, that will change dramatically if Curry gets ruled out. All right. Next up, we have the Portland Trailblazers going up against the Lakers. The Trailblazers have Jeremy Grant out. That's pretty big for this team. That's why a lot of us like Avdia at this point, because he should start with Grant out. But outside of that, who are you looking at?
So yeah, Avdia is the obvious one. He's currently a core play for me. He just looks really good without Grant, and then Lakers really aren't good defensively, so I think he can smash here at that price. Second favorite would probably be Ayton, and he's a leverage play for me. I have a 30% min on him. I liked him before, but once AD was ruled doubtful, that made me love him even more. I think he's way too cheap for his upside and should dominate down low. They won't really have anybody who can contend with him now, I think. And then I was willing to play guys like Kamara and Scoot because when Banton has been rolled out, those guys have kind of been stepping up. But with this hard news, I don't think they'll quite be necessary. So if they show up in the mix, I'd be fine with it. But definitely going to prioritize the cheaper Clipper guards now.
Mm-hmm. For me, I have a 12% min on Ayton. I believe I put that min on Ayton once I saw your leverage play notes, Brandon. So I think I was just following you on that. And I just put a 35% min on Avdia, primarily because he's still a very good 5,700 play, even with all this news that we're getting. And sometimes those good mid-range value plays can fall through the cracks when we get more value options. And so he's just one of those guys I just want to make sure he continues to show up in my lines. And so that was the thought process there. And yeah, Ayton also just makes a shit ton of sense because we've been playing bigs against the Lakers for a while pretty successfully. And I think this is a good bounce back spot for him too. All right. Next up, we have the Lakers going up against Portland. The big thing here, we talked about it at the start of the show. AD is out. And so made a lot of the Lakers much more viable, especially guys like Austin Reeves and LeBron James. So I'm assuming you're looking at those guys, Brandon.
Yep, I don't need to say too much about those two guys. They both will be core plays. Reeves has just been looking amazing the last few games. He's been getting like a ton of assists lately too. I think last game or the game before he had something crazy like 14 or 16 assists or something like that. So I do like how he's becoming more of a playmaker, and we all know he can score the ball too. And then LeBron without AD, I'm just not going to think too much on that, and under 10K at that. So against the Blazers. I did throw a like on Rui, but I'm still only getting 1%. So I might just roll with that, and I won't force the issue there. But okay with playing him. And then I am taking a shot on Finney Smith. I put a 10% min on him. I'm not really much of a Hayes fan, who I think will start for AD, but I could see them running small ball and DFS getting even more minutes than he did last game. So I do want to take a shot there.
Yeah, and Gabe Vincent's doubtful because they're trying to trade him. And so that does give some of the guards a slightly higher floor too. For me, I love LeBron James. I have a 90% min on him. I don't believe that's going to change with the Harden news, but I am thinking about it more critically than I was before. Earlier, I was like, you know what? I'm going to put a 90% min on LeBron, 60% min on Embiid, 30% min on Giannis, be over the field on those three. I'm going to call it a day. Now, as we get news, sometimes you have to rethink your strategy. LeBron James is someone I still want to be over the field on, but 90% is probably a little strong at this point. But I do want to make sure I'm at least over 60, so I can at least guarantee that. The rest I'll have to continue to think through. Austin Reeves, I have a like on to make sure he shows up more. He sees the second highest increase in usage with AD out, so that made a ton of sense. And again, his floor is a little bit more solidified with Vincent out. And other Lakers, guys like Max Christie showing up around 11%. That might change with the Clippers news. We'll see. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Tattoo, can I have the nuts line up, please and thank you? You have to wait your turn, Tattoo, just like everybody else. Yeah, if you could hit the like button, appreciate that. It shows a lot of support, making sure everyone knows that there are actual people tuning in for this, for us here at DFS Army. And then Tattoo said, Happy New Year's, fam. Hope you all crush NBA. I'm too lazy to keep up the chaos. Embrace the chaos, Tattoo. I'm trying. I was embracing it, but the Clippers news is a little bit of a bummer for me. But we're adjusting, we're evolving. You want to talk about the Clippers news? Are you feeling differently now, Brandon, than you were earlier, or what are your thoughts?
So it doesn't look like we have it updated yet, but kind of like we mentioned earlier, Chris Dunn, Kevin Porter Jr., and Powell will be the main priorities. And then already had some Zubac, and then I'm even more comfortable playing Derrick Jones now as well. So those pretty much KPJ doesn't start, but pretty much the starters I want to make sure I have exposure to.
Yeah, this team becomes a priority for me, especially Chris Dunn and KPJ. They're the obvious ones. And then Zubac, I don't think his ownership will change too much. So I'm comfortable with that 10. I might boost it to 15, 20% if ownership start to adjust some. And then Norman Powell, his ownership will change. I'll have to make sure I'm over the field wherever that is. But like you said, Chris Dunn and KPJ are going to be the focal points. We have until 7:30. Lock isn't until later. So I am just going to wait for the DS to update itself. And then I'll make some adjustments if I need to. And y'all know you can always reach out in the Discord. You can DM me or add us in the chat, and we can answer those questions for you.
There is one name I want to mention too, who I think, I don't know what his ownership would be, but I could see him going off tonight, and that's Bones Highland. When he sees the minutes, he typically does well, and he's 3K flat. So he's going to be somebody that's on my radar and who I'm looking at as we get things updated.
Yeah, and we should have a projection on him here soon as well. So looking forward to that one. Darius, I can't, man. Tattoo, so I have a nickel for you if you move me up the line. I hear you. All right, what am I? So at this point, we'll just kind of go through, answer questions. I know there were a few questions that came through earlier that I had to pass on. Let me see if I can find them. Thoughts on GP and Maxey? Do you have any general thoughts on? Well, I know you like Maxey, or maybe I'm thinking about the wrong one.
Yeah, I like Maxey quite a bit, so I'm definitely good with him tonight.
Okay. And maybe he meant PG. And you like both of them, right?
Yeah. I don't mind. I like Maxey more, of course, but I don't mind PG tonight either.
Yeah. James said, best low-owned play for single entry on FanDuel. That's going to be one we have to look up because neither of us really play on FanDuel. I'll give Brandon a little bit of time to think that through. But for me, in general, and I haven't looked at FanDuel yet, but I can also pull it up on my side. Do you know, is Joel Embiid's priced appropriately on FanDuel, right?
He's a little more expensive, 10.5, but that's still not the worst.
Yeah, it's still not awful, but it's more appropriate. Ownership. It's crazy how different ownership can be on the two different sites.
Yep.
Like people who are low owned for DK are super chalky on FanDuel. But do you have anyone who stands out for you?
I would say maybe Bam. His ownership is somewhat low over there. And one guy I didn't mention on the Warriors is Steph. If he does play, I do want to take some shots on him tonight.
Yeah, I don't think those are bad calls. And then Don said, am I wrong for putting a min percentage on and then maxing them at 80%, for example? I like Nimbard, but I put him at a max of 80. Don I wouldn't put a min and a max on someone, but if you're doing one or the other, that's totally fine. If you like Nimbard today, there's not really a reason to max him at 80% unless you want to max him at 80. I don't know if I'm answering your question exactly the way you're looking for it to be answered, but yeah, it's fine as long as you do one or the other. Am I wrong?
So somebody like Nimbard isn't popping, so you don't need a max on them. Typically, when we put mins on guys, they're for guys who aren't showing up as much as we want. So that min is to get them at the exposure we're trying to get. So say you wanted 30%, you would put a 30% min on them, but the max would kind of be pointless because you weren't getting that much to begin with. So usually just a min does a trick.
Yeah, like for me, when you look at Nimbard, he's 5,200. I have a like on him to try and get him to show up a little bit more, and I put a 15% min on him. Which, again, like now just thinking about opportunity costs and things of that sort, point guard position is very valuable now that we have the value from guys like Dunn and KPJ. So I'm going to lower that 15% min to 10. I still want to have some exposure to him, but just small changes like that to try and make sure I can still get more exposure to guys I now like more. Dixon said, y'all don't like Pritchard. Is it because he's 2 feet tall? Brandon, do you like Pritchard? I feel like you touched on him.
If you land on him, I'm not against it, but I just have higher priorities, even more so now with the harder news.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's it. He does at this point have 50-point upside. He's proven that at 6K is not like you're crazy playing him, especially with Brown out and Porzingis. But like you said, it's just the other value on the slate is what makes me not as excited about it. OG, what's up, man? Happy New Year to you as well. He said, when we see a core play, how are you entering this in the DS? I'm clicking like for a core play. Am I doing this incorrectly? For me, OG, core plays are always my top 5 highest owned plays. Sometimes that's someone I put a like on. Other times it's just guys that the DS likes naturally. And I agree with that. So it just varies. And you're the same way, right, Brandon, or anything?
Yeah, I'll say my core is fluid. What I normally do, like first thing I do is always run the DS raw, just to see who's popping and who lands where. And then I'll go team by team and start making adjustments based on what I see. And once I'm done, rerun, of course, and then whoever is showing like in that core level range, that's who I land on. And then, of course, times like now when we get slate breaking news, like the harder news, my core is going to be completely different than what it was before. So very fluid, and it just depends on who lands where after I make changes.
Yeah. Let's see. People really liked your Highland call. Derek.
Yeah, he's showing 5% now. I'm probably gonna throw like a 20% min on him. He's 3K flat, so I'm going way over on him.
Yeah, and just so you know, X Factor Powell probably won't be low owned.
Yeah, he definitely won't be.
He's probably gonna be pretty chalky. So just react to that accordingly. All right, so that's pretty much everything, y'all. Again, there's a lot of time until lock. Lock's not until 7:30. We still have some huge Q tags, and I'm sure we'll get a little bit of news before this. So this is definitely one of those slates. Don't leave your computer yet. Stay close to the Discord. We're more than happy to give you all some advice on what we're doing. So definitely be there. And then, yeah, that's pretty much the last thing I want to say. Anything else you want to add, Brandon?
Nope. I completely agree with what you said.
All right. Be good, y'all. Peace out.
Sheesh. Yeah, big time.